So, top 10 teams of 2023, with Vitality being announced as the team of the year. Okay, let's just kind of like look at. Oh my fucking god, Gamer Legion, really? Are we serious right now? Is Gamer Legion really a top 10 team of the year? They made a lot of prize money because of one tournament. So they came in 10th here. I don't have a lot to say other than I'm kind of shocked they made the top 10, but also if you come in second place at the only major of the year, you would have thought maybe you would do literally anything else in the year. But when you look at Acor's achievements from the previous year, which is practically speaking all they did. Actually, a better website to do all this would be is Liquipedia. It's just much easier and more obvious what I'm looking at here. So here's what Gamer Legion did last year. They obviously, I mean, they couldn't make it to Rio. They couldn't do that. They did well in a single Thunder pick thing. Second place at an RMR qualifier. CCT, all this is just online. I mean, this is what happens when you're not a partner team, really. But okay, it looks like we're trending upwards here. You win an Elisa Invitational online versus Copenhagen Flames. You come in second place to Astralis in an online CCT event. You miss out on Dallas, I think. It looks like they didn't make it to Dallas either. They lost to, in the qualifier, Epic Dudes. They lost to Epic Dudes. They made it through RMRA. They did terribly at Brazy Party, and then suddenly they just peaked at the major, and they came in second place on this miracle run. And good for them. Good for them at doing that. But then they really did just fall back down to earth pretty hard in a 7th to 8th finish at Cologne, where their victories, by the way, were over, who did they even beat? The Mongols, Fnatic, and that's it. They beat the Mongols and Fnatic and came in top 8 at Cologne. So that's not really saying anything to me at all. Fnatic, mostly because Fnatic were struggling for a lot of this year. And if you look at who was even playing in this game for Fnatic, it was Mezzi, who actually bottom fragged, kind of like this was not an uncommon sight, by the way. And what else? Gamers 8, they top 8'd because who did they beat? They actually beat Apex. So, okay, that's cool. Two teams that did very well at the major got to face off, but like, yeah, not the worst loss or anything like that, but you're just beating Apex. I mean, these results, basically all the results from here on do look like a team that should probably be top 10 because you're kind of, second place at a huge one, and then you're top 8ing at every other event. But they also did very badly at Pro League. But then everything before that in their year was just practically nothing. But they did well at the event that mattered, which was the major. Okay, number 9, NaVi. They didn't really exist for a while, seemingly, because the core changed so drastically. And this team was able to come in second place at ESL Pro League. And that was kind of their biggest achievement of the year with Alexi B. You look at some of their other results. This is just not the same team. So this is kind of a hard, this is just a completely different core. So they're talking about a NaVi core of Alexi, Ima, Bit, and JL, which is also, again, they're basically only talking about how they did for a very brief period of time. But they actually shot up the ranks pretty quickly. The second place finish at ESL Pro League with Simple helped them out a lot. They played Sydney with Blade, which really was not a lot to really think about or worry about. The fall final, all they did was they beat one team. They beat NIP, so they were able to make it to top 6, which, again, that's not really a huge accomplishment. And then at the world final, they actually did better. This is kind of where they were lightly impressive, beating G2. This was the game where I actually called out Hooksy. Let me see. I'll show you all this part.
And yet he's doing that again. I still stand by the fact that I think that this lineup, in terms of firepower, well behind a team like G2. There's no way, if the calling were 1-for-1 in this game, there's definitely G2 should have been, yeah, you should have been the winners. You should have been. If you have that much firepower, you should be taking it. But the Alexi B, the calling, Ima himself had a great pop-off here, but the calling on top of it was great.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's the difference, right? We came...
There, the Hooksy call-out. That was like another big Navi achievement for this one, the fact that they were able to beat a team that was ahead of them in firepower. Like, nobody would look at the lineups. Hunter, Nico, Monacy, Hooksy, Nexa. You have 3 guys that were in the top 12. Nico, number 2 in the world. Monacy, number 4 in the world. Hunter, I think, was number 12 in the world. And then on Navi, not a single person in the top 20. this team is obviously weaker on paper, and it's weaker in firepower. And so for Navi to beat them, that's why I said that thing about Hooksy. Big achievement for them. Yeah, deserve it number 9 in the world. I'd say overperforming based off of a lot of people were looking at this and like, it was all question marks. Can Ema continue what he did with Gamer Legion? The answer was actually no. He fell off, but he got a little bit better at the tail end of the year at the World Finals. Bit, could he actually transition to speaking on a roster with English? I think we saw some difficulties with it, but he's actually playing different roles now. He's playing more anchor positions. Ema's taken his spots on CT side especially. JL felt like a system player for some time, and so it's kind of interesting to find that he might be the 3rd best fragger fragger on this team behind Ema and behind Bit and Wonderful. And then obviously the transition to Wonderful, and Wonderful has been a really, really solid addition on the team. So happy about that. Then scrolling down, Cloud9, just kind of fell off a cliff. Just the revolving door of oppers and people like that. Overall, very disappointing year for them because they finally pulled the trigger on the NaVi replacement, which I was very happy about in July. But then they just lost Shiro. They had Electronic. I was happy because they finally made the change, but Electronic obviously never proved that he was a great leader on his own, and that you think of the successes that Electronic had as an in-game leader for Navi, and his best one was the Blast Spring Finals, which was immediately after they had to take out Boomich, and so they were still using the remnants of the system that Boomich and Blade had put together, yet they just put in a better fragger in SDY, and so they were able to win a tournament with him. So for Electronic after that, haven't really in any point really proven that he's a good in-game leader, unfortunately, and so now they're playing with Boomich, obviously. And they don't even show Boomich here. They didn't even show Boomich on this. What? Why do they not? That happened. That literally happened. Why is his name not here? That's weird. But then you lose Shiro. Why does it say core Shiro? Oh, they're talking about a different lineup practically. Like, wait, is there? Oh, they're showing multiple teams twice sometimes. Oh, and they're saying the core wasn't there for long enough because I was like, Shiro was gone. Okay, so they're just rating this version of it. Okay, I don't really know how to read this, actually. I could just talk about Cloud9 beyond that. I don't know what I feel about this kind of, like, core rating, because Buster was gone, too. Why is Axel not part of the core? Why would Axel not be part of the core when we're talking about a team that he was always on? What? Oh, it's because Axel didn't play all of Cologne? Oh, that's so... He played the playoffs, but in the group stage, it was Buster. Okay, whatever. I don't know what to... That's a weird thing. Okay, they talk about this Navi, who, yeah, they were not really the same. They didn't have that same ferocity as other years prior, but with NPL, just kind of obviously too much of a weak link for the team. Like a lot of mistakes. Electronic himself not always calling the best stuff. This felt like at some times Perfecto was the most consistent player on the team, other than Simple. There were like too many ups and downs with everybody on this roster, and yeah, they just never could recapture the form. Mau's at number 6. Happy to see this. Would have liked if you're number 6 in the world to have a player who was clearly your best in the year be better than 12th though, as the 12th best player in the world. But okay, whatever. Either way, Mau's nice to see them find some success when they won ESL Pro League, and Torzy won MVP at that by HLTV. For my money, I think you guys know the answer. I thought it was Frozen. I thought it could have maybe even been Yimpat too. Like, it was a very, very close race between the 3 of them, but they gave it to Torzy, I think, based off of kind of what happened sort of in the later stages of that tournament. And also, even though they're the ones that made HLTV rating, they don't want to just look at rating sometimes and give it to the person that has the highest rating. So go figure. They'd rather give it to the guy whose gun costs more, and like the economic implications of the gun, I guess, don't matter. So I guess that doesn't factor into any of this kind of analysis either, where if a rifler delivers practically as much as an opper and has less resources in terms of money being spent on him, I don't know how that's not a more valuable player. That's doing more with less. It's literally doing the same, if not more, with less money. So this is an impossible concept, as no one would ever do this. If there were a player that could have a 1.1 rating, but only ever use the Deagle or MP9 or Mac 10, and they could somehow always put that number up, in some funny way, they would probably be the MVP of that team because they could just keep dropping other people on that team who would then benefit from that. I feel like that's something that does not get factored in when you have two people that's one's a rifler, one's an opper. Doesn't, like, it's the same concept. It's the exact same concept. People are dropping the opper ops so they can't get as much for themselves. The team is losing out. So if that output of that player isn't better than a rifler, why does he have the more expensive gun? So, yeah. Sanji, but good. Sanji, but good. Ganji. Yeah. Ents, you got Nerts, Moddens, and Pious Core. I mean, this team, I almost felt like they could have been higher than 5th when I kind of think about it, but I guess you look at these other teams and, yeah, some of them really, I mean, the obvious ones are, the top 3 are very obvious. I'm actually surprised, actually, now that I saw the order of that a little bit. Not kind of surprised, not exactly, but Ents, yeah, like this was a team that was just punching above its weight the entire time it existed. For probably some of the cheaper signings and the more diamonds in the rough signings in the space, this team obviously did very well. They won IEM Dallas, and they came in 2nd place 3 times at... So Gamers 8 was one of them. Gamers 8, Cologne, and Pro League. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So you look at, like, the colors of this. So much silver, so much bronze, 1 gold here in terms of just, you know, this is kind of a bad showing for them, but I think this is when they were with Glaive. I think this kind of was the Glaive stuff for them. This is when they started using Glaive. And then CAC, they did decently. Yeah. You look at a lot of the teams that they lost to across all of this, and they're practically speaking a lot of the best teams in the world. There's a couple blemishes on this, but yeah, very, very consistent. Like, the worst showing for them by far was this. Like, this just felt like it never should have happened. To lose to NIP in the Legend stage in a 1-2 match, and you already had, well, I mean, losing to Vitality on Vertigo, I don't think there's any shame in that. Losing to Into the Breach on Vertigo, if anybody knew what they knew now about Into the Breach, people would have banned Vertigo against this team probably a little bit more. Because you can't... Because they were just so good at that map. Because Cypher was just such a beast on it. Like, you look at... what other maps did they play? Like, when they couldn't play it against Liquid, and then they played it against... Yeah, they played it against Fnatic, and that's what helped them secure a playoff berth. So, yeah. I mean, Cypher was just, like, the sickest ever. I don't know how they beat FaZe on Inferno. I kind of forgot about that, actually. But other than that, like, really, really good. This is one of the reasons, I mean, these results and the accomplishments there are why we gave Snappy such a high ranking for being in our IGL tier list and everything like that. Because you look at the players, and what you have: Sun Pius, who's a top 10 player. You have Nerts, who, where did he land? Did he 14th? So you have 2 guys that are in the top 20, but I feel it's I mean, it's arguable. Nerts could still be really good. He hasn't looked as sharp on Heroic yet, but that team is still coming together in a lot of ways. And then Heroic also just a great level of consistency there. They came in 2nd in CAD, like, really early in the year. They were coming into the year as practically, like, the most stable team, and they were coming with a huge chip on their shoulder, losing Rio in a kind of humiliating fashion where they were the favorites going against outsiders. And so they come back in some nice form. They obviously won the fall finals, didn't do so well at the world finals because they had, I think, Config playing for Stown here. Yeah, Config was in here for Stown. And then, yeah, Kato did well. Weird loss here at Pro League, to be honest. But, yeah, they make it to the major through the RMR. They did 2nd at Rio behind Vitality, who was now peaking in grand, like, they were, like, major winning form. Paris Major, this was the most humiliating defeat by far of any team throughout the entire year, and it was probably the biggest choke on the biggest stage you could have ever had. And that's when I went in on Cadian, and 3 Reddit threads were made about me, which were just all flaming me in, like, 5 seconds. And like 2 of them were left up for a while, which is crazy. Fun moderating team over there on Reddit. And IEM Dallas, weird loss to Maus, another kind of, like, big sort of choky moment, but then they bring it back at the spring final. They actually beat Vitality, which was a really nice win for them. They made playoffs of Cologne, but then this was a weird loss too, losing to Astralis. I think Astralis was, like, in really good form on just Ancient. I think that was kind of like their trump card. Yeah, so they were like the best calling Ancient team for a period of time right here when BlameF started using conditioning on the B bomb site, because you could throw nades on B from spawn and it makes CTs react in a certain way, and people didn't have the answer to that for a while, so that's why they were very good at it. But then they got, yeah, I mean, this is like an obvious loss. Like the personnel is just way behind on Astrals. Like this is when they had Borup and Stare and Buzz, by the way. So losing to that team when you're a heroic is crazy. So you feel like you're totally outplayed here. Like, look at this. Buzz, Device, BlameF, Stare, Borup. Like, how does this team even win, you know? KD and then you have the best lineup that Heroic's ever going to have. Like, right there. So, okay, moving down. FaZe, some dips, but never really even going that low. It looks like their worst ranking throughout the year was 6th in September. So, yeah, that was crazy. Their year was saved when CS2 came out, I will say. That end of the year for FaZe was just, wow, man. Like, everybody had such a resurgence in form. Felt like Rops even maybe could have taken away number 2 from Nico because of what happened right here where they win all the big events to kick off. Like, they proved to be the best CS2 team in, like, period. They won the very first event. They won a big online event, which is kind of like, it's kind of weird, but in a funny way, like winning an online event like that seems a little dumb and to like rate it that highly, but it's actually sometimes harder, and it kind of shows that you can win in different circumstances, and it's not just the pressure in a big moment that gets you. So in a funny way, I think this also bolsters their resume at the end of the year. I mean, it's obviously not bad that they win it, but it's just like you get to add to the fact that like, okay, they're doing things well online and in person. So it's not just like land conditions where other people are more likely to crumble. Because sometimes like back in the day, if you remember like 2014 or 15 or whatever, it felt so likely that a team like Fnatic would just lose online to anybody because they just don't get excited about it and the pressure's not there, and so other people aren't nervous. But for FaZe to not have the big pressure on their shoulders, everybody's just in the room drinking Coca-Cola and also be able to win, like that's impressive. And then they win CIC, second place of Vitality twice in a row. So maybe, I mean, like, you know, you could make the argument very easily Vitality was the best CS2 team, but the very first event for CS2, they came in practically last place. Yeah, they came in last place, actually. They actually came in last place. So, yeah, really, really good year from them, saved by the bell, I'd say. And then G2, this is practically a ranking that is just because they won Cologne and Katowice. Two massive, massive achievements amongst a year that otherwise was a bit less impressive. And we look at their rankings or their placings throughout the year, and it's just really inconsistent. You know, they win Kato, RMR, whatever, but then 9th to 12th at Pro League, like what? That's so odd. You know, they kind of squeaked through at the RMR here. At the major, they went 1-2 in the Legend stage, losing to Fnatic here, and this is literally when that's why Kassad wrote that tweet, by the way. When they had the option to keep Nuke, Vertigo was left over intentionally by G2, and that's when Kassad said this is Hooksy's fault, because look at how Nico did in the final match of his CSGO career, final map of his CSGO career. Just bottled it, man. Just nothing. He was feeding. He was absolutely feeding in this game. I think if you look at opening deaths on this map too, it was just kind of pathetic. Look at this. Nico, look at all his deaths. 1, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8 opening deaths on a single map. He got 1 opening kill. This was a massive, massive choke by Nico, and also a failure in the veto, according to Kassad, by G2 and Hooksy. And well, you'd blame Swanee too, probably, right? If anybody wants to give him credit, well, you got to point out his failures too. So I don't know who made the decision on the veto, but I think Kassad has a very, very particular idea about that. Vitality, though, I mean, beyond that, though, I mean, obviously, because I do want to say some nice stuff about them. Like, their wins were sick. When G2 was peaking, it's such a joy to watch them play off of each other, have such individual flair and ability, and for the style that they play fast. They can play really fast, and that's exciting, and I like that. I mean, shows that fast Counter-Strike is still viable, especially when they had their Inferno streak in CS2. They were just going fast. They were balls to the wall, pedal to the metal. You take banana control. Well, if we take banana control, we're execing on you. That's it. It's done. No story. And then they boot JKS in a move that can only be seen now as nepotism, where Nexa is just worse than JKS. But people have kind of like let it through the grapevine here and there that JKS might not have been the best person to work with. But if you win 2 massive S-tier trophies in the same year, and people are so like, just get Dexter. Why is Dexter not on a team? Like, Dexter's attitude is, like, look over his attitude. He's still a good fragger. It's like, bro, like, JKS, no one's even said he's toxic, but people were literally like, no, Dexter's fucking toxic. Like, he's really hard to work with. Like, no one wants to work with him. Like, they didn't even want to work with JKS because he was seemingly like a negative guy in the locker room or something. Like, it's bewildering to me because we never really heard anything like that until it happened. And also, they were doing so well at so many events, and we knew what their ceiling was. But now we watch them play, and they are lacking a little bit of firepower. The cohesion hasn't gotten any better. It's actually literally worse now with Nexa. So, and the thing is, I also stood right next to G2 when they were playing in the World Final, and like, Nexa's contributing a little bit vocally, but it's not like it's changing the whole dynamic of the team. He's kind of like saying everything every now and then. Nexa will be like, all right, guys, let's focus. Or, hey, next round. Like, he just kind of says stuff like that. That's okay. It's not necessarily, I don't know if it's changing the entire mood of the room. But he's a positive. There's some positivity there. I'm not gonna say he's doing nothing, but it's definitely not like, hey, Nico, get your head on straight. Like, he's not calling people out. I didn't hear any of that. Maybe sometimes, but in terms of what I heard, standing next to them for a few matches, like, he's not going above and beyond. He's not some new soothsayer like Nico Whisperer or anything like that. So, number one, obviously, Vitality. There was no question about this whatsoever. When this kind of article is written, it's practically a Vitality glazing attempt. Not really, I mean, they earn this and then some. You win Rio White right before you win the S tier event right before the major. You win the major itself. You have the best player in the world. Look at like the things that you didn't do well at were a lot of things that kind of didn't matter that much. This is a bit of an indictment on them. This was a really bad choke. I remember when they lost to Liquid here. I think they were up 15-9 or something like that, and then Liquid came back on overpass, and then won the first map, and then they went on to win the series. This was a really, really weird one. Like, let's look at it. 15-7. 15-7. They just choked this one entirely. Liquid came back, winning it on 3 maps. Weirdly like a poor ZywOo game also. This was where the air quality theory was alive and well, where the air quality in Katowice is worse, and thus ZywOo plays worse in Katowice. And if you actually look at it, I'm gonna glaze myself here a little bit still. It's obviously a very jokey thing, but like, look at the 2 events this year that were ZywOo's worst events, and think about the air quality in both of these places, okay? So 2023, I have to do this. I'm sorry, I just have to do this. You had a show who cares? Katowice, and this is like, his ratings are still god tier, guys. They're still very good. But like, actually since all this has happened, he's had some actually lower rating events, but at the time, it was the Blast Spring Final. Literally, the Blast Spring Final, he had a 1.18, which at the time was his worst event of the year. And then he had the bad CS2 event, also, like, by his standards, bad CS2 event. But the lowest event he had in the year, Washington, D.C. had a cloud of smog surrounding it because of the forest fires in Montreal that were blowing winds down, and literally that place, you could not be outside for more than 5 minutes without feeling it in your throat. Like, it was, you couldn't see things. It looked dystopian. If you guys lived on the East Coast or anything like that and you saw that, that was funny. And then Katowice being a coal mining town with some of the worst air pollution in Poland on a regular basis, it's like, that's why the theory kind of stands. I don't know about Sydney. I don't know Sydney's air quality. That's when I went on the tip of, at the time, he wasn't a top 10 CS2 player, which everybody was like, it's not true. It's not true. It's like, well, literally the stats say it's true. That's why I said it. Like, it was obviously a low sample size, but like, I'm not lying. I wasn't lying. He was, by statistical measure, not a top 10 player at that time. But either way, Vitality number 1. Apex, proving to me this year, best in-game leader in the world. Consistency with C was there. ZywOo, obviously incredible. Spinks had the huge glow up this year. Definitely had some difficulty in the beginning on Vitality, finding out what he should be doing in rounds. But I feel like he's kind of back to the old Spinks that was so deadly and hard to play against on ends, where it feels like any time he can push, and he's either going to be rewarded with 1, a kill on CT side, or 2, information about where the opponents are. Spinks is that guy now that is constantly just breathing down your neck, just right there, pushing you in, and you're either pushing a bomb site or you're realizing, oh my God, Spinks is on us. Now they know where we are. So that was really nice for him. Magisk, for me, anchor of the year. dupreeh, really shoddy form until practically the major and the run up to it. I think it was deserved that he was removed from the team after a while, because he kind of showed he could get it together for big events, but like throughout the rest of the year, you don't want to have a player that's just a clear liability. And that could have been towards effort, or I don't know, maybe just it's hard to say, but it felt like the only tournaments that matter for dupreeh are the absolute biggest ones, and he didn't even always do that well in the biggest ones. Like I don't think Cologne was necessarily like no, he didn't play Cologne. I don't think Katowice, for example, was like a great showing for him either. Yeah, so this was like, to me, very deserved. Like I don't think he really had earned his spot on Vitality after a while. Like these were just, like this is not really what you want from this guy. But then, yeah, cool. The run up to the major, you're a very solid contributing member. I'm glad that he's getting a little bit of a resurgence, or he did on Heroic. Mostly online games are where he did well, which was weird. But then he kind of fell back down to earth for these LAN games against Tier 1 competition. I don't really know what to think of the future of dupreeh, to be honest, because it really does feel like he's kind of past it at this point. And I wouldn't mind seeing him play for a Tier 2 team, which I think he's doing now with, he's on Prezi, right? Yeah, okay, it shows it right there. He's on Prezi. So, yeah, he's still getting a crack at it, and I think that's earned, but I got to see it to believe it for him. Flames, I was a fan of this roster move when that happened, when dupreeh was replaced by Flames. I didn't necessarily think that Flames had always shown the best level of consistency on OG, nor even the best flashes of like mechanical brilliance. He obviously had that incredible entry route highlight of the year, one of those moments sort of thing, when he came out on Mirage A, where he got flashed out and just like destroyed everybody. So there are little glimpses, but I don't see those regularly enough. And actually, flat out at the World Final, his aim was at the Fall Final and World Final. Flames' aim was noticeably worse than other Tier 1 players. I'll just say that. Like, it was noticeable that in 50-50 duels, he would just not be able to put his crosshair as quickly on opponents as they did on him. And I was just, like, constant. It was very, very regular. So, yeah, he's got a lot to prove still in the upcoming year as an individual. And I think that, but what I liked about the signing in general is that I like that the way Flames plays. On CT side, he's very proactive. He's always kind of looking for more information. I think that's the way you need to play Counter-Strike nowadays, where you're not just relying on your own individual ability, you're trying to carve your own destiny every single round. Now, Mezi, I never really threw a lot of flame at him, but people kind of thought I was down-talking him. I just basically said, I think Mezi is like a top 30 player in the world, but I don't see him as like, he's like in the 21 to 35 range, but I didn't see him as a top 20 player, which is kind of like the most I could ever say negatively about him. He's still really good, really solid piece. Obviously has shown that he can be a good communicator, given that he was IGLing for Fnatic, and they were actually just better when Mezi, to me, they were just better when Mezi was calling than Dexter was calling. I think that's debatable, but I think it's true. And I think a lot of people are still waiting for that Mezi that they think has the potential to come out. I think we saw that actually at the World Final for a bit, but you're always going to be playing second, if not third fiddle when ZywOo and Spinks are on your team. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to ever pop off to find an MVP or something like that, but I don't think it's likely when you have this couple. And Spinks isn't even winning MVPs either. It's just ZywOo all day. So yeah.